Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Stephen McCoy, and you are listening to Sessions with Stephen. And today we have friend to the show, Mr. Kelly Price, actor, writer, producer, director. He is definitely doing it all. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, Steven. Thanks for having me back on the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see you again. I mean, because the last time that we interviewed, I believe it was during the time of the COVID times. And man, I mean, clearly you made it out okay.
Yeah, man. No, the last time we talked, yeah, I think it was during COVID. I think our movie Reboot Camp was premiering at
Yeah,
the Austin
yeah.
Film Festival, and
Woo.
uh, and we interviewed during that time. Yeah, it was a crazy time. The festival wasn't live; it was online. So now
Yeah,
it's nice to have all the big festivals back and everybody making movies again. It's a
absolutely.
nice time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have most certainly. It's almost like I looked at all the things that you're doing, and it's almost like as soon as COVID ended, you just ran straight to the bank. Like, I mean, 'cause you have Hellfire that's come out, you have the HBO season two show that's out. You have so many different projects that literally, I mean, you are really doing it. So I would love to start on Hellfire. Would
Yeah.
you elaborate on how that came about?
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, so Hellfire stars Stephen Lang and Harvey Keitel and Dolph Lundgren, and it's a really fun, high-octane action movie. And that movie's coming out through Saban Films within the next 2 months or so. And so we're really stoked about that. Release date is pending. I should have that for you shortly, but it's in post-production and finishing up, and we're so excited about it. Stephen Lang is just so badass in it, and obviously, he was amazing, and everybody knows him from Avatar. But this character really, he plays a vet in this movie, a military vet, and he just comes to this small town, and he just kicks butt, man. He just kicks butt, and it's nonstop action, and I just love him in anything. But in this movie, he's especially very good. So we're looking forward to it.
I love it. And you are a character as well in this,
No,
correct?
I just produced, I executive produced this one. I wasn't in it, but we have Murder at Hollow Creek, which is premiering at the Beverly Hills Film Festival at the Trent
Yeah.
Theater at the end of the at May 1st. On May
You
1st,
wore multiple hats in that one, for sure.
that one I wrote, I produced, and I was one of the leads in that movie. And so that one is close to my heart just because obviously anytime you write something and then you produce it after you write it, it just takes so much time to get off the ground. And honestly, with that one, it didn't take too much time, but obviously the writing process took me about a year, and then I produced it from scratch. I had, nobody attached, and went out and put Perry Reeves from Entourage on it. I put Mickey Rourke on it, and then we started to get some interest from investors, from other producers. And then I said, hey, to my friend David Lipper, I said, "Do you want to come direct this movie?" He came on to direct it, and we built our production team, and it was amazing, man. From I think I wrote it in like March of 2021, and then we were on set about March of 2022. So the whole
Uh,
process was about a year and change. And we shot in Mississippi, and we had such a great time shooting in Mississippi. It's such an underrated place to shoot. The
did
people
they
are
really?
amazing. Yeah, yeah, the people are amazing. The locations were great. We really, really got high production value for that movie, and everybody just loved shooting there. It was just the weather was pretty good for the most part. You never know what you're gonna get. Obviously,
Yeah.
in Mississippi, you could have tornadoes, you could have like storms, and I mean we had an actress, Penelope Ann Miller, who was in the movie. She did such a great job in it, but she was flying in from LA, and I just remember finishing a scene and having to deal with her travel because there was a tornado in Mississippi.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so it was like constant jumping from acting to figuring out how a cast member is
Yeah.
going to get to set with everything going on, and it was wild, but it was a great experience. And again, whenever you write something, it's from the heart, right? And then you
Yeah.
produce it, and it takes so much time to talent package and to find investors and all that stuff. So it's very close to my heart for those reasons.
Yeah.
But then
I
I named the
absolutely love
character,
that.
and then I named the character after my grandfather.
What did your family say when they found out that you named your character after your grandfather?
I'm gonna get emotional even talking about it, but I sent my grandfather, I think, a screenshot of the IMDb showing his name
Yeah.
as the character, and it was a really cool moment. His wife, my grandma, passed away pretty recently, and so for him to see that and like be honored by his grandson, I think it was important to him. I had a film, my first film was an ode to my great grandfather. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that this movie's an ode to my grandfather because it's an action comedy and it's a lot of fun and all that. But he plays so he there's a character at the opening. My character, young Gavin, his father at the opening, is teaching him a lesson about life. And shortly after, he's murdered. And so that character was embodied as as my great grandfather. And so that character is an ode to him. And
Wow.
so, I like to do that in little pieces of everything I do. If somebody was
Yeah.
a mentor to me or somebody that imprinted something in me that that made an impact on me, I like to honor them. And so
Yeah.
I did that with that little part for my grandfather. And
I
Casper Van
love
Dien,
that.
the actor Casper Van Dien, played the role. So he essentially was playing the role that was honoring my grandfather.
Yeah.
He said to me, Kelly, the reason why I really took a liking to the role is because the first line of my character's speech is like I forget the exact date, but it was May something 1970 whatever, and that was whatever day in May it was that I wrote as the first dialogue for his speech was his grandfather's birthday.
No way.
Yeah, I think it was May 9th. I'm not 100% sure,
Wow.
but it was his grandfather, May 8th. May 8th. That's what it was.
Okay.
Was his grandfather's birthday, and his grandfather made a huge impact in Casper's life.
Wow.
The two
Wow.
of us bonded on,
Isn't that something? Yeah. The synergy in that is just, I mean, that's something that really can't be bought. You can't make these things up. How this happens. And I always felt like your work has always been truly authentic in all of the things that you've done. But I am curious to know, how did you evolve as a producer and writer since during the last time that we spoke? Because I know that you had a whole bunch of things that you were working on. Some of these things have come into fruition now. But I just wonder, what was that evolution like between then and now, as a producer, director, and writer? Has anything changed?
It's a good question. I think, yes, there's been a crazy evolution in my production, in producing, because I think at the time we talked, my movie On Thin Ice, my first movie was just coming out. Reboot Camp was set to come out shortly thereafter, and 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 that's what really kind of started it for me. That first movie that was an ode to my great grandfather, On Thin Ice. It was a movie that highlighted athletes that have been discriminated against or that
Yeah.
were speaking out against discrimination in the realm of sports. And and so that movie came out, and people just brought me on to produce their movies based on the fact that I put that together without any knowledge, prior knowledge of production, and packaged it and financed it and distributed it and crewed up and did everything on my own. And so people just brought me on to produce their stuff. And after that, I started making several movies per year. I think now we're at like 5 to 6 movies per year.
That's a
And
lot of work.
it's
That's
a
a
lot of
lot
work.
of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. But
I
yeah, I
mean,
think
just
that's
one
the
a year.
one a year is a lot. We
But
have a
yeah,
movie shooting right now in Vancouver. And it's a really, really cool concept. Also kind of social justice, but action. So
yeah,
I love to make movies that have an impact, that have a social impact potentially, but
for
also are action movies. Because I think that in some respect, people go to the cinema to escape, right? So I think
that.
that's where like the action elements come into to our work because people want to escape and uh,
Yeah,
watch a riveting action sequence or movie or, but at the same time, having an undercurrent of something that people can relate to, I think is super important to make a greater impact, send a greater message. And so we get behind a lot of movies like that. So that's our movie that's shooting right now in Vancouver
like,
with Terry Chen and Stephen Dorff. And
hey,
and yeah, man. So our company Price Productions, has definitely evolved since the last time we talked. Now,
yeah,
we had that
clearly.
movie. Oh.
I mean, the projects are because a lot of I do know it had been really tough for I mean with all that's going on with the writer's strike and all of these things, and you managed to literally push through the time, So I think that's pretty awesome. And I do know that you said that you're currently shooting in Vancouver. What is the unexpected? Because see, in Mississippi, you had got a tornado. Do most in Canada, do you get rain unexpectedly? And do you guys sometimes just go ahead and go with it and allow that to be a part of the thing sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If there's a crazy scene that's going beautifully well and it starts snowing or raining or whatever, and you happen to be, it happens to be going really well otherwise, then if you can keep it going, great. If you have the gear outside that's going to get ruined, then you can't. But if you happen to be enclosed under a tent, the camera's under a tent or something, then obviously if you could keep it going, great. The tornado in Mississippi, that was like just a no, you couldn't do anything. Like, everybody had to stay put for that one and wait for that one to kind of be over. But I mean, if it's snowing or something like that, and you happen to be in the middle of a scene and it starts to snow, then I maybe you just keep going. I haven't experienced that thus far, but I'm sure at some point I will.
Yeah, I assume when you're writing, you may have ideas about the characters that you want, and how they would be casted. How are you able, as a producer and director, to bring the light and allow your characters to complement the story? Because I know one thing I'm sure you want your messages within your film to be conveyed accurately. But I don't know. Is it a challenge sometimes where how many takes do you have to often do with your actors that you hire to be able to convey your character appropriately?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's definitely something that we take very seriously in making sure that the actor embodies the role and really knocks it out of the park and conveys the message that we set out to do as filmmakers. And I think the casting process is a big catalyst to movie making and finding that right actor for the role, that has everything that you need across the board, is super important. to driving your message home. And there have been several instances where, and Murder at Hollow Creek is a good example. There were these two roles. Um, there was these parents in the movie, Jessica Lord, the actress Jessica Lord,
Mhm.
played one of the leads in it, and her parents in the movie had these really, really funny parts in the film that were kind of crucial to the story. And it was very specific. We had to be very specific about who played those roles and who portrayed, those characters.
Yeah.
I had this idea to call Penelope Ann Miller to come in and play one of the roles, which happened to be a great idea. I remember I was on set during that realization, and we were flying a drone literally when I came up with it, and I had this guy flying the drone, and I was like, oh my god, the manager for Penelope's calling, and I went off and ended up bringing her on board at that moment while the drone is flying around, and I had to
Yeah.
walk back. We could have flown that into I have no idea. But I had to take this call, and we ended up bringing Penelope on board. And then, Paul Ben Victor was somebody that actually David had worked with in the past, and we talked about him for Reboot Camp. And I called him one night. I had this realization. I was like, what about Paul to play Penelope's husband? And he was just like, yeah, amazing. And we
Uh,
called Paul, and that was the end of that. So, and it worked beautifully, and they were amazing together. And some of
yeah.
the scenes in the movie are my favorite scenes of the entire film. So, to your point, casting is super important. Um,
Yeah.
in a variety of ways, making sure that you have, enough value with your actor to potentially entice investors, making sure that the actor, like we talked about, embodies the role and the vision of the director and the writers and the producers, and
Hmm.
also making sure that you have somebody on set that's like-minded, that is going to be a team player and really move the project in the right direction and be hopefully be a champion for it.
Absolutely. I so love that. And by the way, congratulations on season 2 of HBO's Rap Shit that you
Oh,
are a
thanks.
part of. So,
I was honored to be a part of that show. It's Issa Rae's show, and she did such a great job with it. She wrote it and created it, and I just had such a great time. We shot it over at the Sony lot, and I play a record exec in the show. And
yeah.
Jonica Booth plays opposite me, and she is hysterical. I think she's going to be a major star. We just had a lot of fun together. Jonica and I, and you can follow her on Instagram. You'll see she's going to be a big star. But
No.
I had so much fun on that show. I really did, and I thank them for bringing me on board because the character was fun for me. It was similar to, I guess, as I'm not a record producer, I'm a film producer, but a lot of the scenes and the vibe felt similar to being a film producer. So
Okay.
I think it was a nice fit for me to come in and portray that part.
Were there any parallels between your actual life as a film producer versus, in the record business? It's two completely different worlds
Yeah, yeah, it's completely different worlds, and then also the worlds do collide in a
in
sense.
some ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in some
for
ways
sure.
too. So there is a dichotomy, but also there's some commonality between the two. And I definitely saw, like one of the scenes took place at um, a big event in Miami, and one of the girls tried to come up to me and sell her band, her artist, and that whole scene, like, yeah, I mean, you could be a film producer at an event, and an actor or a writer or director or producer comes up to you and tries to sell their project to you, and so one could relate,
That's true. Yeah.
right? And to maybe a little bit of the awkwardness of it if the idea is not landing for you, or
Yeah.
so there's a lot of that I was able to kind of like relate to. And also the band that she was pushing happened to be an LGBTQ band. And at the end of the day, she really drives that message home that her band is really going to make an impact and send a positive message. And my
Yeah.
character at the end agrees with her and ends up signing the band. And I could relate to that because our first movie was a social justice LGBTQ film. So there
Yeah.
were several through lines. There were several, things that I could relate to with the character. And at the end of the day, yeah, like not knowing this person, them coming up to you at a random event, but at the end of the day, seeing that they had something special and ending up moving forward with that idea.
Hmm.
So yes, there were some parallels with that.
What did you find more fun in doing TV or film?
That's a good question. I haven't produced TV yet. I've only produced film. So I can't relate in that sense because I haven't produced TV. So I can only tell you how it is to produce film. But as far
Yeah.
as, and same thing with writing, I've only written movies before, but I've acted in both. So I can tell
Yeah.
you
That's
the
right.
difference between acting in TV and film. And I think
Yeah.
acting in TV, it sometimes moves a lot faster. It can move a lot faster. It depends what kind of show you're shooting. I've done sitcoms, I've done, just hour dramas, I've done, kind of
Yeah.
anything at this point. And so yeah, there's definitely a difference between TV and film. One of them being that the TV shows are usually they're usually at a major network. So being at a major network, you tend to have more money, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Bigger
so
budgets
those
and
yeah, more higher budgets and
yeah.
those sets tend to be the food maybe is better. There's just more options to eat. People
Yeah. Right.
around nonstop with platters of food and the buffets and everything, and you're like, holy crap! And the food carts and the assistants and constantly making sure you're okay and like you have
Yeah.
everything you need. There's more manpower. There's more people
Yeah.
on set. And I think for indie films, there are several productions that run super smoothly and have nice budgets and nice food and just because your budget is less doesn't mean that the
Absolutely.
production
Yeah.
quality is going to suffer or that the teams
Yeah.
are any less. But just having, just noticing the difference between shooting an indie film and shooting a TV show. I mean, TV shows that have networks could be shot at like lots, the Paramount lot, the Sony lots, and it's just a different vibe in that sense.
Yeah.
But I equally love shooting both. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that I like one over the other because when I'm hired to act in an indie film, it tends to be usually more meat for me as an actor. It sometimes, not always, but sometimes
Yeah.
in an indie film, there's just more meat for my character. I think a lot of times you can really do things in the indie space that push the envelope a little that
Yeah.
maybe you can't do as much in TV. But I've had great experiences in TV and in film, and I couldn't really choose one over the other.
I could only imagine the amount of, like you said, on the the bigger production than in TV, the networks versus the indie. Um, there's so much more weight on your shoulders to be able to make sure that the set is good and that all of your cast are fed and
Right, right.
but you do get a little bit more freedom just being the actor on a network set, would
Yeah,
you
like,
say?
well, yeah. I mean, you could,
I
free.
guess it depends on how you view
It
it.
it
Yeah.
depends on how you view it, right? I mean, if you view freedom as showing up to a network set and just being in a nice trailer and people constantly bringing you food and stuff and wardrobe,
Yeah.
then great. You also experience that on indie productions. There's no doubt about it. But if you're on
Yeah.
a studio, you have all the carts and the Chinese food and the Zeppelis and the this and the that, and it's constantly there. And that to me, I'm a foodie, so I love that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like as an actor, and I've experienced this on TV shows and I've experienced it on indie sets, is, being able to, you said freedom and artistic freedom. There could be some, maybe a little more sometimes in indie film because you don't have to worry about cursing. You don't have to worry about, certain things that maybe
Yeah.
a network would have certain parameters that maybe an
Right.
indie film doesn't. But I've also experienced networks, being completely free creatively and having a great time from a creative standpoint as well. So again, it is such a toss up. I can't really choose, but as far as freedom goes, it depends how you look at it. Because I've seen that on indie sets and I've seen it in TV, just depending what the person vibes with more.
Anytime I get to interview amazing producers, writers, directors such as yourself, I always wonder because you're an impactful director, writer, and producer. So you only do projects that actually literally has a meaning. And there's definitely a depth of a story there. And I often wonder, I'm curious to know if you would ever tap into the space, another um, untold story, which is dealing with people with disabilities. I
Mhm.
remember when you and I first started, uh, when we first did our interview a few years ago during the COVID time. That was during it probably was a year after I was diagnosed with Usher syndrome,
Mhm.
and which is a retinal eye disease that causes blindness and hearing loss. I actually during that time I was thinking I don't think I can do this anymore. Since then, I've made history and all of these amazing accolades, but there's so much of untold stories that are out there. Like you touched on many topics, such as even the LGBT community that deals with so many different things that people, social impactful things, and I always say in that space, there's also ableism that comes into play with
Mhm.
people with disabilities. Would you ever do a film about any of those sorts of things? And if so, what disability topics or a specific disability that touches your heart?
Man, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's unbelievable. Like that is amazing that this happened to you and you still pushed forward
It
and
happened for
it
me.
happened for you and
Yeah.
you're making history. You're making history. Unbelievable, man. I kudos, brother.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you. And it's an honor to be, on your show. It really is.
It's an honor to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, man. But yes, absolutely. Our first movie also touched on Paralympic athletes. We had an athlete named Amy Mullins who had one leg, and she was incredible
Chips.
jumper, yeah, high jumper and runner, and just incredible
Yeah.
what she has overcome. And I've had moments alone with her, and the stories, man, they really, really hit home on
Mm,
another level of determination and persistence and resilience and what those things really mean when, like you said, things happen for you, and it just changes the landscape. Maybe an obstacle that you weren't expecting, but you use it to your advantage the best that you can. And that's what she did. That's what you're doing. We had a movie about an autistic young kid who wanted to mimic the swimming of his great grandfather. So
wow.
he wanted to become an Olympic swimmer like his grandfather. And so yes, we definitely would produce another
Continue.
film. yeah,
Yeah,
continue down that path and highlight stories that are important regardless of if it's a story on the LGBT community, uh,
yeah.
on a marginalized group, whatever it is. And in this case, we certainly would highlight this community absolutely as they should be. And I'm happy if you have anything that you would like to send. I'm open to reading.
Oh, that would be amazing. Look, because it's just so much that goes on, as you know, just behind the scenes, and there's so much change that's happening, and I love that with your film, it literally goes along with the time, even if the the world is not caught up yet, they would catch up to the film, which
Yeah,
is beautiful.
yeah.
So, and I want to ask for those because I don't know exactly, what were those true challenges were for you as a up and coming. But what would you say to those who wants to be a writer, wants to be a producer, wants to be a director, and they really just don't know which way to go? Because in the day and age where we are able to pull out even our phones and create whatever content, and it's almost becoming. Some people I know feel like it's oversaturated.
Mhm.
What advice would you be able to give up and coming who is going in that same direction as you are now?
That's not sure which direction to go. You're saying whether acting, producing, writing.
Yeah,
Yes, I would say just, go with what you feel, because I always wanted to produce movies. For me, it was just easier to go on auditions and get on set that way and get my feet wet that way, learning
mm,
on set. And I didn't see a path as a high schooler, because that's when I started acting. I didn't see a path where I would produce a movie as a young, a high schooler. I just didn't know how to do that. But I knew that if I just went on auditions, I would end up on set, and that's eventually where I wanted to be.
yeah,
And I knew I just needed to get on set and learn, and maybe eventually I would produce something or write something. And so that's
yeah,
how I started, just because I saw, like, okay, be an actor, go on auditions, get on set, and go from there. So that's the path that I took. But now
yeah,
I think things have really changed. The landscape has certainly changed since I was, in high school, and um,
yeah,
now people can upload their short films to YouTube or their feature films to YouTube, and
yeah.
there's several outlets. Instagram, I mean, Facebook, there are several outlets that allow you to show your content,
Hmm.
highlight your work. So I think it's changed a little bit because you could throw up a fun action sequence on YouTube, for instance, and it could go viral, and people can be coming after you to direct their films.
Yeah.
A feature. We had a director that uploaded a film on YouTube and ended up directing a movie that we executive produced called Bandit. With Mel Gibson and Josh Duhamel. He had a movie on YouTube go viral. So there are a lot of opportunities
Mhm.
now, I think, for up and coming filmmakers and actors, writers, producers, and directors to get their feet wet and get their work out there. So yeah, I wouldn't be discouraged by it. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a bit oversaturated out there, and there's a lot of artists out there, but just, if it's something that you believe in, you'll just
Yeah.
follow your own path. When I made my movie about my Jewish great grandfather, who was an immigrant from Poland and came to the States and started speed skating and became a well-known speed skater, but wasn't able to skate on Olympic ice because of the double stigma in the 1930s of being an
Mm.
immigrant and being Jewish. it just didn't happen that there were immigrant Jews in the Olympics competing in the Olympics at that time, and and I thought that was an important story to tell for my family, and just as a gift to my family. And I didn't realize that it would actually become a feature film, that it would actually come out and people, would see it. I had no idea. So I think, yeah, sometimes your path leads you in directions that you didn't anticipate, and they
Right.
end up being happy accidents that lead to the next step in your
Yeah.
career. So just getting your stuff out there could lead somewhere that you didn't anticipate and maybe make for a nice career.
Kelly Price, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to Sessions with Steven, dropping some gems on us and tons of projects, by the way. And before we leave, I would love to know, I mean, is there anything more that you can fit on your plate?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if something comes my way and it hits, absolutely. And you know it too. If there's a project that comes my way, I feel it right away, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I have some sort of vibe with it. I it's impossible to put into words, but you just know it's just a feeling. It's like,
yeah,
when you meet the love
yeah.
of your life, and you end up producing a project that reaches the masses and becomes a huge success, and the origin story of those things is always crazy. But
Yeah.
for me at least, when those things happen to me, I know instantly that there is something there. And so, if a project comes my way that just jumps off the page to me, that I have a vision for, that I see being a huge success on Hulu or in theaters or whatever the path is,
Yeah.
then I'll take it on. It doesn't matter if we're shooting another movie or we have 5 films in post production. I mean, at the end of the day, if we've been able to make, the amount of movies that we made, why not take on another one and get another one made, right? So
Exactly. Nothing like having an impactful catalog as you do. So
thank
I love it. So
thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.